Joining today's podcast is the great Gil Patterson, my good friend and the Oakland A's minor league pitching coordinator. Welcome, Gil. I'm thrilled to have you on the show.
Thanks, Wayne. I'm very happy to be here. And I love that great part, especially. No, as humble as we are, all we want to do is help people.
No, but you are great. I'm going to tell them a little bit about you, and I'm barely going to touch the surface. You've had a great success as a player and as a coach throughout the minor leagues and the major leagues. You were drafted 4 times as a first rounder, and on the 4th time by the Yankees in 1975 out of Miami Dade Community College. And then you made it all the way to the big leagues in just 2 years. Wow. After that, you began coaching for the Yankees, then the Diamondbacks, the Blue Jays. You became a pitching coordinator for the Diamondbacks and the A's, and a bullpen coach for the Blue Jays. And as a pitching coach for the Blue Jays for 2 years, you even taught Doc Halladay. You even taught yourself to throw left-handed when you got hurt. I mean, you have an amazing story. I wanted to talk to you about control, command, and sequencing, and understand, how did you learn those personally?
When I was very lucky. After I graduated high school as a 17-year-old in North Miami Beach. And the only reason I graduated at 17 was because my birth date, not because of brain cells. So I went to junior college, Miami Dade South. Coach Charlie Green was the head coach there. And you want to talk about someone who's great in our game, it's Charlie Green. His son now is a director of baseball ops and catching with the Brewers. Charlie was tremendous, Wayne. He would have us go through drills, throwing drills with nets, delivery drills, making sure we had hip rotation, arguably before all of this new biomechanics and kinematic sequence even came up. And Wayne, he was the biggest reason why out of high school, I was maybe 88 and 89. And when I left him 2 years later, I was 92 and then eventually to 95. But Charlie Green, Wayne, was a huge impact in my life.
I have to read more about him then. It sounds like a really smart guy.
He's like 90. He is awesome.
Wow. I mean, maybe get him on the show.
Yes. And I had these stick drills I used to do, and he would always come back. You know that big, is it called the ABCA meeting? The big one they have in Nashville. And he would always, he went like 35 straight years.
Wow.
And so he would say, whenever he went overseas to do clinics, he would say, Gil, they're doing your stick drills in Poland. So he would take my stick drills and go all over the world. But Wayne, you're right. He's a special man and a special coach.
Yeah, I think people often don't remember that we kind of all stand on the shoulders of people before us. Just like our mutual friend Emo always talks about you, that how you built him up and helped him. It's like, that's part of the beauty of the game of baseball, is that you kind of help the next guy, You
really said it. And there's lots of things from your brain I've picked, lots of things from Emo brains that I picked. And then we just formulate something. We have a tool belt. Yeah. And our own tools are not going to help every pitcher we ever have. So you've got to be able to go back in your tool belt to find other things that people have helped you with to pass on, because that's what we're trying to do, pass it on and get them better.
Yeah. I like a new one that Emo says, I love the saying. He talks about useful velocity. And, that just says it all. Like, what can you use?
You can make your 90-mile-an-hour fastball look like it's 96. Yeah. And then while others make their 96-mile-an-hour fastball look like it's 91.
That's right.
Absolutely. Emo's right. I'm right with him. Another thing that he says a lot that I really like, although we could go on for hours.
Yeah.
With all the things
I love talking to Emo.
That I say. He would say this: instead of trying to make your pitches better, make better pitches.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It is. And it's usually like this, Wayne. The hitter will tell you how good a pitch is.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you're getting swing and miss, and when they're hitting it, it's hit softly, I'm okay, regardless of what the numbers say. So those are all keys to you. Like you said, It is. It really is the art of pitching.
Yeah, it's just like in pitch grader. I always tell people, well, we're looking at the numbers, but the numbers are only kind of guidelines for things. You still have to look at it with your eyes. So the visualization in pitch grader lets you see things that's kind of beyond the numbers that you wouldn't have seen if you just looked at the numbers or a chart, you know?
I couldn't agree with you more. And I mean, I remember the videos you sent in the backyard with Sean thrown into the pitch grader. And of course, I stole some of that to use with us, although we just have to have a catcher with the boxes and the numbers in it. But you know,
we got to get you guys one of these command trackers too, you know?
Yeah, you do. Yes, you do.
So I was really interested to know, like, you work with Doc Halladay for a couple of years, and he's was an amazing pitcher and great guy. What types of things did he work on and focus on?
Wayne, it was interesting. If these numbers still hold true, back when I was there, 2000 through 2004, as you mentioned, 2 years as a bullpen coach, 2 years as a pitching coach. Doc had the highest ERA in the history of baseball of a starter going over 100 innings. Mm-hmm. He threw 98 to 100 with just a hammer. Right over the top, though, right over the top. And, you know, it seems like nowadays people are chasing velo, and we all know why. Arguably, we all know why. But there's Hall of Famers. Go ahead,
that's really something I want to talk about a little bit before we go into Doc, is that they chased velo for the sake of velo. Yet, if you can't throw it for a strike control, and let alone command it, it's kind of a dead end path, right?
You're 100%. I mean, there's been plenty of pitchers who throw 96, 7, and 8 who get released. And then there's guys who pitch at 91 that are still pitching. And it's because they can command and control the ball. And, you know, as you first started out, there is a difference.
Yeah.
Control guys are just in any of those 9 boxes. They're just, you know, and the biggest thing it is, say 1, 2, 3 along the top, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So if you said throw for the 8 box, that's middle at the knees. The chances of a guy doing that, even in the major leagues, 30 or 40% of the time is great. Forget about 50 and 60 to hit that box. But the point is early, throw it for that box. And if you kind of cut it a little bit to the arm side, you're still for a strike. But now if you try to hit lanes, you try to hit the 7 box or the 9 first pitch and it moves 4 inches, well, now it's 1-0. Because first pitch strikes and 1-1 conversions, it's where it all starts, right? I'm not saying that we've never gotten a guy out on a 2-1 or a 2-0 changeup. I'm not saying that. And maybe even thrown a fastball in per se. But the guys, and there's guys here in the big leagues that pitch at 92, that walk 2 guys a game. Shane Berber, Kyle Hendricks, Kyle Freeland. I think it's Aaron Savalia with Tampa. George Kirby now walks less than 1, but throws 96. But Zach Eflin throws 92 and walks 1.2. So it just goes back to, with Oakland, and I'm sure it's with every team, Oakland, especially with the leadership we've had here with Keith Lippman, David Forrest, Billy Bean, now Ed Sprague, Grady Fuson. These guys have always talked to us about pounding the strike zone, being the hunters, not the hunted, right? So this way, if you can teach guys to attack the strike zone, the first 3 pitches, 2 of them for strikes. And again, I am probably not saying that every other team does not teach, but we pound it. And the guys that are successful, 99.9% of the times are the guys that are able to do that. I saw an article once, you know how we're always, again, as we mentioned before, always trying to get better information, more information, whether it be from pitching gurus, the internet, it doesn't matter. If we can learn something that's going to help, we're going to do it. And when I learn something, if it helps, I always take all the credit. And then if it doesn't help, I say, oh yeah, Wayne told me that. Wayne told me to do that. So I'm playing, or the pitching guru. But we want first pitch strikes. And with that, I saw this article. If you can throw 70% first pitch strikes on 3-0 counts, why is it only 57 on 0-0 counts?
Yeah, it's mental.
And that's it. So whatever you throw 3-0, arguably, we all know sometimes an umpire might give you a pitch. Basically, most pitchers aren't afraid of contact. So here it is, strike. Well, I want you to be that hunter from strike one. I want that first pitch strike and then turn it into 1-1 conversions. You know, and then just getting back to Doc, and I know we're kind of going in different directions, Wayne, I apologize.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. I could listen to you
Doc,
for hours.
Really? With Doc, a couple things happened with Doc. First, he went back to the minor leagues.
Right.
And a wonderful gentleman who pitched a long time, I think, with Cincinnati. We had him as a coordinator. He has since passed, but he was the biggest director of lowering Doc's arm angle from high overhand to low 3/4.
Yeah, then now you get movement. Yeah.
Yes. He got a 2-seamer, he cut it, and he could always spin it.
Yeah.
And so Craig Lefferts, one of our coordinators with Oakland, was also with Doc in AA at that point. And Wayne, the transformation is just what everyone's seen. Mm-hmm. And it went from straight over the top at 99 to 94 and 5. He would start it at their belt buckle and it would end up at their kneecaps. Late, hard, and he could locate. He had such a plan and a routine on his side work and pre-game. It was like, he's done this. I remember a game he got rained out. We got rained out in New York. We came back at 1 a.m. He wanted to go throw his bullpen.
What kind of prep would he do before? What kind of prep would he do, like pre-game and like maybe days before the game?
Well, he was definitely a student of the game. Now with EMO and the analytics people who are a great help to us, they can kind of put together a pitching game plan from the pitchers, from the own pitchers' repertoire as well, or other pitchers with similar repertoires, which is really good. But Doc was like that. He was locked in. And his side routine, it was always the same. 5 sinkers arm 5 cutters glove side, and I'm talking about 2 balls on the plate. Now, he could start it would start in the middle, but would end up on the block or out of third. That's why, again, he walked 2 guys per 9, even with his stuff. The other thing he did that was really arguably the biggest turning point for him, and not that the physical point wasn't, but the mental game is arguably even more important than the physical. And at that point, go ahead, Wayne.
Yeah, Greg Maddux talks about that turning point for his career too.
And I think it was with the same guy, Harvey Dorfman. I had in Oakland. Then he moved on to the Marlins.
Yeah, Dorfman is a god for most people.
Without question. And there's other very good people out there. Don't get me wrong, there are. But Harvey's book, even now, we kind of make it mandatory to read a chapter out of Harvey's book one time a homestand or once a week, just because the ability to execute the most important pitch in a game, which is the next one you're going to throw, to execute one pitch at a game with all your focus, concentration, your conviction, your trust, and then just pick up the target and let it eat. And so that step-by-step process is what helped Doc the most. Doc now realized that people's behavior in the dugout, when he was giving up runs, people behaved in the dugout poorly, and arguably shame on them, because as staff members and pitching coaches and managers and managing people, regardless of how they're performing, you've got to show them you believe in them and you trust them. Now, yes, they might have to go down to the minors. You got to tell them you got to get better. But Doc let other people crush his spirit. Once he became friends with Harvey, we used to read 1 chapter a day early on.
I think one thing my son did in an interview that I loved was he talked about, like, in the early days in college, where he would kind of want to succeed, and he wouldn't wish bad results on his teammate pitchers, but he wouldn't really wish that they do well either. So, and then when he went to DBU, Dan Hefner is an awesome coach. And what he learned there was that to be all in on your teammates, cheer for them, help them, and that being a great teammate and supporting your pitchers, even if they're competing for your position, that ultimately helps you too. And so, and it makes it so he said in the minor leagues, it's hard. Everyone wants to move up. And if you only focus on you and only cheer for you, it's going to be a long, dull road. So maybe that's part of a Dorfman thing.
I think it might be a Sean Boyle thing or this coach that you just mentioned, because that I am 100% in on that.
Yeah.
You know, you every day that the pitchers work, I tell them, you know, because we have strength coaches, athletic trainers, every organization does, pitching coaches, they're trying to help. Then you'll see some pitchers that want to slide out of getting the work done. And, you know, that's almost a thing of character. Show me what you're going to do when you don't think anyone will ever find out, and still do the right.
Absolutely. When my kids were growing up, I always told them that character matters. I said, do the right thing when no one is looking.
I'm right with you. And I think if we had any one of our sons and daughters, brothers or sisters, mom and dad, we would want them, grandpa, grandma, we want them to do the same thing and teach us. And that's wonderful. And I like it, because you're right. Everything you're doing it for yourself to get better. Now, when I do that, because team come first, now the team wins. Yeah. It's good. It's good. And I like what he said. Just root for everyone, because no matter what they do, it's all about arguably what you're doing. If you don't perform, it doesn't matter that 10 other people aren't performing. It's not going to help you. You just go pitch well. You perform well. You behave well. And let's go find out where we're going from there.
Yeah. So Doc Halladay lowered the slot to like 3/4, which gave him movement. And then with Northman, he worked on his mental game. And what part of the mental game was it? Things we were talking about just now, like, or are there others?
We have a pyramid that I developed. Actually, it started with Doc. When I went to the Yankees some, I shared it with Andy Petitte, shared it with Rivera, Diamondbacks.
Oh, you work with those guys too?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And again, you're just learning. And sometimes I've learned more from minor league pitchers who haven't even gotten to the big leagues than I have sometimes from an Andy or from a Rocket. So it all ties the loop. I mean, even to today, you're still just trying to learn. But the biggest thing about this pyramid is at the bottom of it, it's about team, growth, preparation. Then it talks about knowing your deliveries and your delivery keys, so you can throw quality strikes. It talks about the first 3 pitches having 2 for strikes. It talks about the ability of commanding the fastball up and in, down and away to both righties and lefties, including doubling up in. It talks about the ability to throw off-speed pitches behind in the count for strikes, and the ability to throw them and expand with them when you're ahead in the count. Talks about controlling the running game. It talks about making sure that you don't overthrow. Just make your pitch. You don't need more. 91 located is better than 92 or 3 if I try to hump up. Middle.
Yeah.
Then we talk about the mental part, the mental discipline of you have to control your thoughts and emotions without regard to any internal or external factor that might disrupt you from your task at hand. Our task is making one pitch at a time.
Right.
And I can't let Wayne, I can't let anything, the hitter, the rain, the umpire missed a call, my team just made 2 errors. If any of those start to have the wheels come off, I got to put the wheels back on in one pitch and get back on the mound, trust it, conviction. We always tell the guys, when I was with the Yankees, we had El Duque. I sent El Duque down to Dominican, and he told those guys, you got to pitch with cabeza, corazon, and cojones, head, heart, and balls. And I said, I love it. Actually, when the guys pitch good, I send them this picture, And so I tell the guys sometimes, you're out in the middle of the ocean, all right? You got 2 options. You can sink or you can swim. Now, I know your balls are big enough. I know your heart's big enough. You're going to do the dog paddle, the breaststroke. You're going to get out of there. What I don't want to happen is that you're in quicksand now and you fight heart and your balls, but now you better use your head, because the more you fight in quicksand, the more you sink and the faster you sink. So that's where you have to combine the head, heart, and balls together to be able to be a competitor and a good competitor. Harvey tells a story once about a Hall of Famer coming off the field and kicking the water cooler. And Harvey goes up to him. The guy's like 6'6", Harvey's like 5'6". He says, "What's that?" He says, "Well, I'm a competitor." He says, "Yeah, an ineffective one." He says, "If you would attack the strike zone like you attacked the water cooler, you'd be a lot better off." Harvey didn't care, you know, and that's why some guys loved him and maybe others didn't, because they didn't want to hear the truth. But yeah, the combination, that's what Doc was able to do. He combined eventually the physical and the mental, Wayne, and he was just a fierce competitor. He wanted to finish every game.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how do you think of command and control at the different levels in the minors and the big leagues? Like at what level do they all have to have control? Then at some point they have to get command. And at what levels of command do they need to get to kind of move up?
Yeah, and this is where, you know, Emo says this too, Wayne, about get me outs. You know, if you walk 5 for 9, but you got people out, it's probably not going to matter. But
I know it's like when I talk with my son, if you have 4 or 5 pitches and strike a guy out, that's good. But he knows, like he's on the mound, he knows if he gets 1 pitch, 70-mile ground out to short, that he knows I'm home just cheering. You know, like, because to me, getting outs with the least amount of pitches helps your team win.
Without question. You know, and that's where, you know, tying in the old school pitching coach, where sometimes I would look at the delivery, and I'm not going to say that's not important because it still is. But now tying in with the Kinetracks they have now and the kinematic sequence of making sure that the body's moving the right way,
right,
with the hip, shoulder, trunk, elbow, and then extension out front. So all those things have to fit together. However, sometimes there are people without that sequence that stay healthy and throw strikes. So arguably we're not going to check, you know, so there is such a balance. And that's why I love, you know, hearing some of the gurus that our pitchers go to, getting information from them, having a conversation with them, seeing other people on the internet that have their thoughts and ideas. You know, pro baseball coaches don't know it all, you know, we are still trying to get better. So there's other resources that we can find to help us grow, to put more things in our toolbox. But one of the things that we always talk about is 2 out of 3 pitches. I would love for you to be able to throw the ball somewhere in your 8-inch pie. And an 8-inch pie plate seems like big, but it's not big. It's sometimes it can be big as far as being in the strike zone. But if you break up home plate into 7 lanes, don't forget about up and down for a minute. 7 baseballs cover the front of home plate, right? From the outside edges. And so if you would ask any major league pitcher to throw it over 1 ball, it ain't happening, right? You might say 3, which is almost a half of a plate. And so when they're throwing to lanes, we work a lot on lanes, but also up and down. I'll put a cone, one of those cones that you see that strength and conditioning people use.
Right.
I'll put that on the outside edge and it almost goes to the middle. So I know that's 3 balls. Then I'll go 2 inches off the plate and put another cone. And I want them to feel what it's like to go outer third, off, outer third, off, outer third. And you can do it any way that best helps the pitcher get a feel. And that's what it's all about. Feel, right? It's all about a rhythm and a feel for the guy. And that's why overall, why some people can command better. Their feel of repeating their delivery is better than guys who maybe can't, or guys who maybe try to throw max effort and it's a little bit harder for them. I mean, I'd rather have you throw a ball at 93 where you want than 95 or 6 not where you want. I'm not going to say that no one's ever overthrown a pitch and not gotten a good result. They have. Of course they have. However, from probably a health perspective, just having a good rhythm, the right speed and tempo of delivery, good little bit of balance going down the mound, some good direction, keeping your head on line. Boy, geez, you do that, you know, the Grenkes, the Maddoxes, you know, like I told you, I went and pulled up about 15 of the guys who walk 2 or less per 9. And not all of them throw 91, some throw 95, but for the most part, it almost seemed like the biggest common denominator was that head kind of went directly to home plate and didn't spin off early. And so we practice with these cones for them to practice lanes. And then like with a changeup, we'll practice middle at the thigh, middle below the knee, middle at the thigh, middle. Same thing with a breaking ball. Give me a breaking ball, a good hard breaking ball, belt to thigh. Then you want to expand, go lower than the knees or go off the plate. So we kind of like the cone perspective because it gives you a little bit of a visual about the lanes you want to be in. And again, some guys don't like the 1-and-1. It's like, okay, maybe it's 2-and-2. But for me, 2 out of 3. Throw the ball in this little pie. And if you can't do it 2 out of 3 times, we got to keep practicing. Sometimes you move to another spot because it helps lock you back into the spot you were originally going for. But that's what we do a lot, Wayne. And like you said, sometimes we'll have them throw into the net like your pitch grader. But yeah, those are some of the things that we do.
Oh, yeah. The target that we're selling now called Command Trakker, that actually came about from a target that I made for Sean on a like a backstop, and I epoxy painted these 5-inch by 7-inch numbers. And what we would do is I would call out a number or letter, and he would throw that pitch to that letter. So we didn't practice throwing harder. Well, we kind of did, but we really did. The focus was always on command. What I did was I did videotape with an iPad his mechanics, and then we measured the velo. So as he was trying to reach command and hit a spot, when he did that and I had a higher velocity, I would then go with the iPad next to him and show him the video and said, look here, when you had your arm here, you had a higher velo and you hit the spot. So we kind of developed that way. And I was talking to Ron Wolfworth at the Texas Baseball Ranch at Dallas, DBU one day. And I was telling them that, and he had a great way of putting it. He says, no, what you did was organic development. And I love that saying that he did, because it was. In which I had looked at some gurus online because I knew nothing about baseball, let alone pitching. So I was searching for ways to help my son. And when none of those were really working, I just kind of said, all right, you throw. When you do better, we'll take that and say, okay, you did better here, and we'll kind of iterate. Have you ever done that kind of thing?
Well, the organic stuff is a little bit too much for me. It's too expensive. I don't buy organic. No, I'm playing. We brought, again, Oakland is continually trying to get better, especially the pitching. And we brought in a guy named Dan Hubbs and Pike Goldsmith. And then Ed Gitlitz is our video coordinator, with the Edutronics cameras. That's been a big help for us. And, maybe that's a little bit similar to what Ron did with you in Dallas. But let me ask you this: how big were the letters that you wanted Sean to hit? How big was that? Was it a kind of a box?
No, they're 5 inches by 7 inches, because
By 5 by 7.
5 inches by 7 inches, you can fit 3 across the zone.
Yeah.
3 up.
How often did you ever tell him to try to hit the same box 3 times in a row?
Yeah. We would practice, okay, we're going to throw your slider today and hit that box. We'll throw 10 pitches. And then on other days, we would mix them, meaning, all right, we're going to do sinker slider. Like you're going to mix, like if you were in the majors of pros, you might work sinker cutter, or maybe cutter or slider, or like fastball curveball to kind of help tunnel. So you're going to want them to hit a spot, but you're going to want to tunnel that so that the fastball's here and the curveball lands lower.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I was just wondering, remember I said before, let's say you would ask Sean to hit the 7 box, let's say, or the bottom down and away to a righty.
Right.
And if you told him to do it 3 times in that 5 by 7, would you say most of the time he hit it 1 out of 3? Or would you say most of the time he hit it 2 out of 3?
I would say after the first year, I would say 2 out of 3 easily. I mean, if he does it now, or well, now he's
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah,
no,
yeah.
but like when he's practiced with the target, he's either hitting that spot or he's at the next just a hair over.
And what you and I are talking about, and like you said, with your influence from Ron, that's exactly what our goal is each time. And I think the frustrating thing sometimes for coaches is, and maybe even for the pitcher themselves, they do work so hard and diligently on trying to command and arguably fastball first, right? Arguably fastball first. And why do some guys get it and others don't? And it's, heck, the reasons might be limited. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's because they don't really practice it. Like, for example, when you practice, I know at the A's, and they use a TrackMan, and you tell a guy to throw in the lower number 7 box, he has to have a picture in his mind of where that is because it's not shown to him. And then when he throws, then it's measured. So you're measuring his ability to imagine where number 7 is and his ability to throw to where his imaginary number 7. So I think it becomes hard to train command that way.
Let me ask you this, and this is one of the great things I think sometimes about pitching people interacting is you learn from each other, even though sometimes it might not be exactly on the same page. And I think that's good for anybody listening, including us. But let me ask you this, you're right. But we have the catcher setting up where that 7 box would be, whether it be 7 or wherever it might be. His glove is that box. Would you say that could play as well?
Oh, it does, yes. But like, for example, I've noticed when people are using my target now, a really unique thing I didn't think would happen is that there becomes a common language, kind of like what we were talking about. So when someone's used my target for a while, the pitcher, the batter, the coach, if I say hit number 3 with a slider, they know where that is. Like I have the zone and then I have the shadow zone. I could tell them a letter or a number and it becomes like a common language. I could say, okay, I hit letter A with a cutter.
Right. Do you think, and like I said, I like it, and Oakland better order 12 of those. But with that said, even though when they pitch in a game, you're saying that because they threw to the target without a catcher, now in a game it's equally or even easier.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because what I did, I wrote an article for Baseball Prospectus a few years ago called The Universal Strike Zone. And I wrote that article because they were starting to use the RoboZone. And I thought that when you're using computers to measure balls and strikes, that you ought to have some consistency so that the batters, the pitchers, the umpires are all on the same page. And what I did was I used Army data that was on thousands of men, and it measured where their hips are, where their arms are, their arm length, everything about them. And I took the typical 6'2" batter and figured out what is his typical zone. So meaning if you're pitching to Altuve or Judge, you're going to be different, but the typical batter is going to be this zone.
Yeah.
That zone is what I made the target. So when you put the target up, it is the right height, the right width, everything about it is what you're going to see in a game. So if you practice throwing to that zone, that's the zone, whether the catcher is even showing you a mitt. He may show you a mitt here, but he wants the ball here, that may be the start point. So, but if you know that your catcher wants the ball at number 7, he doesn't even have to show you that. You're going to have this visualization in your mind. You know where 7 is. And so does he.
Yeah. And you just mentioned a word that is extremely important. Visualization is such a huge key.
Oh,
huge
yeah.
Key.
For command, I always talked about, and I learned this from a study. Remember I said I was trying to learn everything I could about pitching to help my son. I read a study about, there was a few of them about darts, where they had different groups. One group practiced darts for like 2 weeks straight, throwing them. Another group only practiced throwing darts in their mind. They closed their eyes and pictured throwing the darts. Another dart group did nothing. And then after 2 weeks, they measured the improvement. They measured everybody at the beginning. Then 2 weeks later, measured everybody again. After 2 weeks, the group that had mentally trained with darts had an improvement over the ones that didn't do anything. So it tells you that mental visualization will help you with that kind of command. And so Sean did that a lot. Before each throw, close your eyes, picture that ball going where you want it to go, and then throw.
That's interesting. It just as you were saying that, it brought two things to me. One, about maybe trying that with some of our pitchers, actually throwing their bullpen or throwing. And then the other thing that I do tell them, I tell them that in their phone, I want them to have them executing a fastball down and away, up and into both righty and lefty. And so they could go home and they could almost, it's not in their brain, but it's on a video, like and you just keep rolling it and you just see yourself. Heck, you might see yourself pound 100 fastballs down and away. You might see 100 fastballs up and in, 100 sliders just off the plate. That's interesting. So like I said, we have partially used that, but again, this is why this is good, because it opens up your mind.
Yeah, that's a very big. The other thing we did too for command and control was you'll notice when he's on the mound, he'll just kind of go like this. And they were like, what are you doing? It's like he's relaxing himself, taking a breath, closing out, then throwing. In other words, that kind of came about a number of ways. But one way was I didn't know anything about baseball. I wanted to help my son. So I'm trying to hit him baseballs in a baseball field. And I hadn't hit since Little League. All right, I'm an engineer. All right, I don't do this. So now he's a little bit younger. I think he was 12, 13 or something. I don't know. But anyway, so as a dad, you want to show I'm the big dad. I got the muscles. I can hit it. So I would muscle up and I'm trying to hit this ball out of the park. And every time I hit it, it would go to second base. Then finally, I figured, all right, the heck with it. And I just relaxed and I would swing at the ball. And without even trying, they were all flying over the fence. And at that moment, it's like, loose muscle. Then I learned loose muscles are fast muscles. Yeah. And loose muscles will also help with control. So that's one thing I learned from listening to Holmes talk about his jab. He would say that he didn't tighten his fist when he threw it because those tight muscles aren't fast. He would have a loose grip, and at the last second, he would close it, and his jab got really fast. And I think they teach that in batting as well. But in terms of pitching, how do you find that? Do you think that looseness helps?
Without question. We call it a cleansing breath. It's on our pyramid, and I didn't mention it before, but taking a deep cleansing breath before every pitch, whether, when you're coming from the stretch, you're doing it kind of as your hands come together. From the windup, it's almost, a lot of times it's right after you get your sign. And a lot of times people think that the cleansing breath, it puffs up your lungs. It doesn't. It's your diaphragm. That's where the breath should come in. That's what makes you loose or keeps you relaxed, to allow, just like you said, the muscles to be at their peak, which is why you hit it over the Little League fence at 200 feet before, and you can only hit it 100 when you try to muscle up. But no, the deep cleansing breath, just like you said, Sean does with his shoulders. We didn't teach that. We just taught the cleansing breath.
Yeah, and he also does things that he learned from yoga, which were breathing in your stomach, breathing in different parts of your body. And yeah, I don't know much about it, but it helped him.
Yeah.
So how would you describe a complete pitcher?
Yeah. It's almost, you need kind of a twofold. The first one, in a sense, I need someone who's going to behave like a professional, like a man, be able to deal with things. Actually, it was one of the things when I first started with Oakland years ago. You always have the shirts that say something. Once I had the pyramid put on the back. The first one was deal with it, because in this game, there is so much adversity. So your ability to deal with things like a man and as a professional is a key. But from the pitching perspective, I need, just like we've talked about all day, Wayne, I need guys who are the hunted, not the hunted. I need guys to be smart enough to pitch with their head and say, you know something, I'm not giving in here. Sometimes a walk is better than a 3-run homer. Yeah. So I need guys who have the knowledge of being able to make pitches, quality pitches. From a mental standpoint, the ones who can stay focused on the next pitch and not let anything bother them. And then the physical part, it's everything. Control the running game, field your position, backing up bases. And that's why, heck, high schools, colleges, pro baseball, that's why all the things that you and I are just kind of tying the loop on at the end, they do. It's why you have the PFPs. It's why you throw your sides. It's why you have mental meetings. It's why you have some of the physical meetings that you're talking about now with visualization. Every club does it, and arguably maybe more the same than we actually think we do. But again, you're just always trying to get better. And these things that you're talking about, when we get guys from college, sometimes if their walk rate is 5 in college, it's not the easiest to change. It's not the easiest to change. So, but if I would say one thing, I would say guys that attack the strike zone. If I say, give me something first, maybe guys that are a little bit, they don't have the best fielders, they're not the best this, the mental game's not there. But that's really important. But I need guys who just attack the strike zone. Yeah.
Oh. So I made a list of things that I thought were important with pitching. And I wanted to see what were the top 4 of those that you thought pitchers need. Now, I didn't include control in this list because I don't think you're a pitcher if you don't even have control. You're a thrower.
Makes sense.
So I have a list that says command, changing speeds, movement, max velocity, sequencing, reading batters, and mental toughness. What are the 4 that you like the most?
Mental toughness, command, changing speeds, what's the other thing one you think I would like there? You've heard me enough talk for the last.
It's movement, max velocity, sequencing, and reading batters left.
Sequencing maybe next. Yeah. The mental part's extremely strong. Then we talked about commanding the baseball, right? Location, basically.
Yeah, the sequencing, I think, like I know a lot of them learned later about being able to read batters and to know what to pitch based upon how you read them. Like if they took and they flinched, if they took and no flinch, were they looking, how they swung at a ball and maybe fouled. Those are other skills to learn.
They are, and this is where sometimes even hitters and hitting coaches can help us as pitching coaches and pitchers.
Yeah.
Ed Sprague is our farm director, and Jim Eppert, our hitting guy, our hitting coordinator. They'll talk to our pitching coaches and our pitchers about it. And that's good. The biggest thing about a sequence, though, is if you can't command the ball where you want to, then the sequencing goes right out the window.
Right. It's like you have to have a control before you can work on command. Yeah.
You really do. And then, just because someone looks bad on one pitch doesn't necessarily mean he's going to look bad on the other. And, I remember Maddox, and, Maddox, there's always things out there that he would say that, people, he would say, I'm going to throw this pitch here because I know he's going to pull it foul. Then I'm going to throw another changeup further in. He's going to pull that foul. Then I'm going to throw a slider away. He's going to swing and miss. You hear those type of stories.
And he did some of those things too.
And maybe so. But, he would say actually, he just had a little podcast that I listened to the other day. And he says, when they're looking hard, I throw it slow. When they're looking in, I throw it away.
Yeah.
When they're looking away, I throw it, and it's like, come on, is it that easy? And he said, yes.
Yes. Well, but you have to have the ability to execute that.
That's arguably what you just said. Arguably, that's it. I'm going to pitch to my strengths. I'm going to throw pitches with conviction and fill it up. And
Yeah.
if you do that, you got something to work with. Now, if they're hitting the ball after that, then we can maybe talk about, do I have to command it better? Maybe if I want curveball, 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 did I go good curve, better curve, and then curve? Because it should have been good, better, and best, right? Mm-hmm. You expand as you get ahead, as opposed to the opposite. And, we've all done that, or all the pitchers have done that. So, but yeah.
Yeah, there's so much more to pitching than what I hear online all the time about velocity, that I think they're not really giving everyone the real story. Because if you have high, like Emo says, velo will get you there, command will help you stay there. It's like velo is a part of it, but it's not the only thing,
And I do think a lot, if not most, pitchers kind of feel that way, arguably. And I think they're recognizing that just throwing hard might actually get you signed. But if you can't throw strikes or change speeds, like you said earlier, you're probably not going to end up or go very far.
Yeah. I think another one that I did put on the list that I might be my number one is character. How you treat others when you're doing well and when you're not doing well, how you do what you need to do as opposed to what you want to do. I think that's probably a really big one for me.
Yeah, me too. And I think when I say act like a professional and be a man, that's kind of the direction. Yeah. With you 100%. Yep. Yeah.
Oh, well, Gil, thanks for coming on the show. I love talking with you, and every time I learn something, and I really appreciate you coming on.
It's great baseball stuff. And if anyone ever reaches out to you and they want to talk to me, feel free. If I can help anyone that listens to you, I would certainly do it at any time.
Awesome. And thanks. And happy birthday. A
Thank
day
you.
late.
Thank you, Wayne. Thanks.
All
right,
buddy.
Bye.